Yo, what up? How's it going? And welcome back for another video. Today's video, we're going to be doing a recap and a review discussion of week 2 of the spring split of the LCS. So in this video, we're going to be, talking about the game scores for this past weekend and talking a little bit about the games. I'm not going to go super in depth about each team because if I do, this video will be an hour long. So we're just going to hit a couple teams pretty more in depth than some other ones. I think the hot topics for this one are going to be TSM, obviously, C9, CLG, TL, Dig. There's going to be some of the ones I'll probably go a little bit more in depth on. And then I have a personal gripe with FlyQuest. But if you want really in-depth stuff on most of the teams, a little bit more in-depth stuff, I'm going to be doing a power rankings this week as well. So nobody's interested in that. You're interested in this video. That's why you clicked on it. So let's just jump right in. All right, so TSM had a 2-0 weekend this weekend, which is super nice. First thing I'm going to say about TSM, before we actually talk about each of the games, I think first week was a bunch of overreactions. So, but what's really funny is TSM, it's different players, same story every year, every single year. So every single year in spring, TSM comes in with really strong individual players that can get leads on their own, and they're going to, and they have a great early game because of that. This has been the past 3 years. And they have a great early game because they're just rolling people over in lane, playing well with their jungler, that type of stuff in early spring. And then their mid game is always horrible, which is really, which something I'll say about that is it's actually a good sign. And I say this every year too. It's a good sign that their problem is the mid game, because one of the hardest things for teams at the beginning of the year to do is to win the early game because their players are bad. And so it's a good sign that the roster pickups in terms of talent, in terms of the people that stayed, they're getting individual leads on their own and getting leads with the jungler. And so that's the hardest thing at the beginning of the year to do for most teams. And if you're not able to do that, you'll lose a lot of games later on in the year if you never have the talent to compete with the other laners and the other junglers. But what bad teams end up doing is they don't fight for early game at all. If you don't have those things, the reason why teams like FlyQuest, and I'll talk more about them in a minute, teams like FlyQuest, stuff like that, they pick up a lot of wins is because they just don't do a whole lot of stuff. And they pick team fight compositions, and the enemy is going to make a mistake because it's early season. Even if the enemy gets a lead, they're going to mess up their mid game setup around objectives, and you have a better team fight comp, and you beat them because they gifted you the game. That happens a lot in early season, in NA and in LEC, actually. So it's a really good sign that TSM has really solid players that get leads on their own, and they're trying to figure out the mid game, which is the next step for a good team. They're playing like they want to be a good team. So I think it's very important for people to recognize that they're playing like they want to be a really good team. And if you play like that and your team isn't really good at that time, then you're going to pick up a lot of losses early on in the season because, like I just said, a lot of teams are going to pick really simple team fight win conditions. They're going to pick really simple team fight win conditions, do nothing the entire game, and then get gifted the game because they just make no mistakes because they don't try to do anything. But it's actually a really good sign that TSM has some really, really strong early games, and they're kind of figuring out the mid game now. That TL game last weekend was a lot better. But they're really figuring out the mid game. I talked a whole lot about that. Let's actually talk about the games that happened this weekend. So that EG game was a little bit, close. That EG game was a little bit close, and honestly was a 1v9 by Broken Blade. Broken Blade 1v9 that game so hard. That was the first game I think that TSM didn't have a lot of early advantages, didn't get a lot of just solo advantages in the early game. I think a little bit of that had to do with draft. But then when you got to the mid and late game, I really think TSM's draft was very nice against them. So EG had, let me go back to where EG played TSM. Yeah, EG had a really strong mid game. So they had, their carries were LeBlanc and Aatrox, and then Aphelios, their AD carry, who obviously scaled super well, but they had LeBlanc and Aatrox, which are really strong mid game champions. And then also Kindred, which is pretty strong on all stages of the game. I thought the Kindred pick here was like super, super weird because TSM had already drafted Displacement with Gragas and Set. They have the ability to displace the Kindred ultimate. So I thought that was a little bit weird. And the early game kind of went into EG's favor. They're playing really well around Svenskeren. Svenskeren was playing pretty decently in this game, at least pushing his advantages that he's supposed to be able to push. And then after you get past the mid game, TSM's comp is a lot better. And honestly, Broken Blade was just 1v9 in this entire game. And it was the first time I've seen a pro player in all the leagues that I've watched actually use Set ultimate correctly. It actually frustrates me so much when I'm watching the LEC and LCS and everybody's trying to insec with Set, which you can do for sure, but everybody's like looking for the insec play, or just displacing one person out of the fight rather than actually using the ultimate to get to the enemy backline, which is what he's designed to do. You're designed to use the ultimate to get to their backline, and it doesn't even matter if you get that nice sweet huge ultimate on top of them, right? Where you deal like half of everybody's health. Like that's obviously what you want. But even if you don't get that, just getting into their backline and causing just disruption. That's why you see the stone plate build so often for team fight. If you're playing for team fight Set, you can do kind of a sideline Set build. But when you're playing for team fight Set, that's why you see stone plate so often, is because you jump into the fight, you do your stun, and then they're going to damage you a bunch. You pop your stone plate and do your haymaker. You'll get that additional shield and it deals true damage. So it's the stone plate synergizes with that so well. Not insecking people. Like insecking people can work, but like I watched a play of I can't remember who did it, but they Set ultimated Lee Sin out of a fight, and then Lee Sin just W'd back in. And that's like all they did in the entire fight. And I think maybe it was like Someday or something. I don't know. I don't remember. But it was the first time I've seen someone actually play Set correctly. It actually blows my mind that people are drafting Set and have no idea how to play him. It's actually insane. Actually, Bwipo's Set was pretty good. I take that back. Bwipo's Set was pretty good. Anyways, yeah. But Broken Blade really 1v9 that game. He played near perfect. He played super, super well in the team fights. He played near perfect. So that was a lot to do with that. CLG, that CLG game, look, CLG is a dumpster fire. So if they lost this game, that was going to be really, really bad. Broken Blade played really well in this game. Broken Blade and Bjergsen both got solo lane advantages. And what's really interesting and what's a good sign is Bjergsen actually roamed at level 3 because Syndra can get really good push early game. LeBlanc can't match at all. It was Syndra versus LeBlanc. Actually roamed up, and the idea of the play was really right, but it just didn't work out. They were trying to make an invade to kill the Olaf, which was actually a really good play. It just didn't end up working out. And so Bjergsen sacked an entire wave whenever he did that, because the wave got pushed in. The play took a little bit too long. He actually sacked half a wave. And at the end of laning phase, with no fights around mid lane really to speak of, Bjergsen came out of lane with a 25 CS advantage. Broken Blade in a Ornn versus Sylas matchup had a solo 30 CS lead. Solo 30 CS lead. There were really no jungle ganks around that lane. Solo 30 CS lead, Ornn versus Sylas. I don't know how you ever get behind that much on Sylas. He must have Ruin must have taken a really, really bad trade early on, and that must have messed up his laning phase pretty bad. But like if you don't know the matchup or you don't know the trading patterns and you're going to lose out on trades that bad, then it's really easy to just farm on Sylas. So that's not a good look. That was really bad. Yeah, and so TSM ended up just rolling over them after the mid game. Every player played really well in this game. Specifically, Broken Blade and Kabe played super well. Kabe played super well. They had Zyricon, played super well. But everybody played pretty solid in that game. So that was a really good look. Their mid game looked a little bit better. They actually didn't get early game advantages that much, except for the solo CS advantages, because their early game play they tried to make kind of set Dardoch a lot behind, trying to make that play. But they actually had really strong mid-game plays that ended up just rolling over the game after the mid-game. So that was a really, really good look for, TSM fans, stuff like that. All right, let's talk about GGS. We're not going to spend too long on GGS. So GGS had 2 games this weekend. They played against EG and IMT. So EG actually drafted a Sona comp. They did Sona Tom Kench. And GGS smartly drafted a split push composition. and they actually drafted, let's look at that first game. Let's look at EG. Saturday. Yeah, so they actually drafted a split push win condition for Hanser on Fiora. He got pretty behind early because Svenskeren was ganking that lane constantly, smartly so, was trying to set behind the Fiora and set up Kumo for teamfight success. It just didn't end up working out. EG's comp doesn't have a lot of damage on it, and Golden Guardians had an Aphelios. They had Aphelios, Nautilus, Syndra, Lee Sin, so a ton of disengage, and EG's comp didn't have a whole lot of engage other than Rek'Sai flashing into the enemy team with an Orianna ball on him. But that is really hard to stay away from that happening. And they GGS just ended up winning off of a split push win, which is exactly how you play against Sona compositions. You play for side lanes. And so actually a good look from GGS's draft. They had a lot of disengage, and they drafted a split push win condition, and they split out and won the game. In the second game, they tried to run so against IMT, they tried to run the Soraka comp. So the Soraka top with Senna, which is actually a pretty decent combo. And then they had LeBlanc and Lee Sin for most of the mid-game damage. This is actually how you structure this comp. This is actually not a bad way to structure this comp. This game, honestly, when you're watching it, it just looked like a lot. Everybody knows like their solo queue game, whenever they go into a solo queue game and they're like, our comp is good. If we would just play together, we could win. That's what that game felt like the entire game. Everybody knows that feeling, right? When you're playing a game and you're like, you lost 3 fights in a row, but they were just like bad fights. That's what it felt like watching that game. And they just lost too many fights and the game was over, is really what it felt like. Smithy played pretty decently on Immortals, and the game just kind of really got messed up from that. Okay, 100 Thieves. So they played COG, so they rolled them. They played COG, and that was the Ryoma on Zoe game. So that was a really good look from Ryoma. So Ryoma actually looked really good in this game on Zoe. So that's a really good look because a lot of people are worried about Ryoma. If you look at like the game stats, I think he's pretty behind in CS, but the way you play Zoe after the mid game is you don't play for side lane. You just play to help people around objectives and poke. And he did exactly that. So he got behind like 70 CS, his 245 and Crown has 322. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Jesus. I choked on my coffee. Oh my God. But Crown was side laning. He was playing Lucian, so he was side laning quite a bit. We'll talk more about CLG because that game was just, oh my God, CLG, man. We'll talk more about that when we talk about CLG though. Someday looked really bad on set. I think this was a game that he looked really bad on set. Or he looked okay. I don't know. Just like nobody has played set good except for Whippo and Broken Blade. But anyways, it was a solid game by 100 Thieves. Ryoma looked pretty good in this one for sure. Meteos had a really troll play in this game, trying to kill Crown, but they recovered and they played really good in the mid to late game. So it was a solid game from 100 Thieves. Cool. The C9 game. Let's go look at that one. C9 game. So C9's looking really good, but we'll talk about that when we talk about C9. This was pretty interesting because C9 drafted a Morgana into the LeBlanc, which has been shown to be a pretty good counter pick to LeBlanc right now. So the way that kind of lane matches up, if people are unsure why Morgana is picked there, is LeBlanc's wave clear pre-6 is really, really bad. So pre-6 and pre-Lost Chapter. So you need Lost Chapter and 6 for your wave clear to start being better. And Morgana is the most uninteractive laning phase you'll ever play against. You literally just W the waves or Tormented Soil the wave, right? And it auto pushes that way. You just auto attack and auto pushes, and there's absolutely no counterplay. It is the most like terrible thing to play against. You try to go in on Morgana and she black shields all of your damage. If you stay too long to try to lane the chain, she throws a Q at you and makes you have to go back. It's so uninteractive early. Post 6 and Lost Chapter, you're able to actually use your double distortion and can play a little bit better around the Morgana. And but yeah, that's what you pick it for. You just get free lane priority and you move with your jungler, which is what they did, and it looked really solid. Sven looked really good on the Senna. They got really far ahead and just kind of rolled over 100 Thieves. So, and they also had Camille for late game win condition, that type of stuff. So, but this is mainly about 100 Thieves. So 100 Thieves, they drafted a zone of control composition. So what I mean by that is they just have comps that just control a single area. So they had Jarvan, Leona, Misfortune. And then for your strong mid game damage, you have LeBlanc and Aatrox, and so it's like a mid game comp. But if you get behind early, then it's really hard to do anything. They got behind early, and then they just got rolled. C9 is looking like the best team in the league, so that's not a really bad look from 100 Thieves. All right, let's talk about C9. I think we just talked about a lot of C9 games. So C9 played IMT and 100 Thieves. So the IMT game, let's look at that. I know Sven played Senna all weekend. Oh, this is the Pantheon Elise. So they had the Pantheon Elise combo. I don't think they really got it off the ground that heavy, but the Pantheon Elise combo is like a really strong combo that people are starting to see. And I'm really happy that Cloud9 pulled it out, because in week 1, there was like no priority on Pantheon, and Pantheon's still like one of the best champions in the game. So it kind of irritated me that NA teams weren't even like looking at Pantheon. But anyways. So they played against IMT. IMT is looking like one of the worst teams. They really just rolled over them. IMT drafted a Yasuo Gragas composition with Ica on the Yasuo, and it never got off the ground. It did not look good at all. I mean, there's not much else to say about this. This is a really easy game for C9. They just kind of rolled. Sven was super far ahead. Everybody's super far ahead. They had strong scaling, and they just rolled IMT in this game. So not really much to talk about. It was 15 kills to 3. Cool. And so the other game was 100 Thieves, and we just kind of talked about that game. Oh yeah, we just talked about that game. So Sven got super far ahead on Senna, and Niski counterpicked with the LeBlanc, and they got a really strong early game and just ended up rolling. So they just rolled people this weekend. We'll talk more about Cloud9 and their strength as a team in the power rankings video that we're going to do. But one thing I'll just say is the reason why Cloud9 looks so good right now is because they have a solid way they want to win. They want to play the game, and they can play, and they play their team comps exactly how they're supposed to be played, which is what you expect of like a mid-season team. So like week 6 spring, they look like a week 6 team. I don't know how much they're going to level up from here. They could just stay at this relative level for a while and just improve marginally. So I wouldn't call right now that Cloud9 is going to win the split or anything like that. They just look like a week 6 team, whereas like other perceived strong teams like TSM or Team Liquid, they all look like a week 3 team or a week 2 team. You know what I mean? They look appropriately, but Cloud9 looks like a week 6, week 7 team. They look like they're ready to go to the playoffs, honestly. And so it'll be really interesting how the league kind of shakes up once TSM, once it gets to like week 7. And, you know, let's say TSM actually improves how it looks like going to. Team Liquid gets Broxa, and they are coming together really nicely. Let's see if that happens. And if that happens, then we'll have a really interesting league, because Cloud9's looking like a really strong team. It's just they just look ahead of everybody else. And so it's hard to tell whether or not they are actually going to be the best team at the end of the split. I would argue that they're not going to be, but they look really good right now. So, I mean, the ball's in their court right now. So everything's coming up Cloud9 right now. So looking good for them for sure. FlyQuest. Okay, FlyQuest played TL and Dig. Let's look at those games. They beat Dig and they lost to TL. I know that. That TL. No, that's the wrong one. TL. Okay, FlyQuest. I can't see their draft. What the hell? Okay, so we're not going to go deep on this anyways. They lost to TL. But I do want to talk about the Dig game a little bit. I think that's a more interesting game. I don't know why the draft isn't available for this game. But anyways, FlyQuest played against Dig and they won that game. So one thing I want to say about this game, I have a big gripe with FlyQuest right now. Not with FlyQuest directly or anything like that. I just have a gripe with the fan perspective of FlyQuest that they're a strong team. Look, I love FlyQuest and I love everything they're doing, and I've been a fan of FlyQuest for a long time. But an issue that FlyQuest has on their team right now, and what they had last year, is they're just not that good. And they get gifted a lot of wins. And this Dig game was a gifted win. And it's really felt like all their wins they've gotten this year has been gifted to them. I'll explain that more. Except for that Riven game, which was game 1, I think. That was like Viper 1v9. But they get gifted. Oh, I remember the TL game now. The Viper played like trash in that game. He played Mordekaiser. That was so terrible. But yeah, they got rolled in that game. But this Dig game, so they got gifted this win. So what I mean by this is they had a really simple team fight composition. They had Rumble, Senna, Jarvan, Alistair, and Aatrox. Had a really strong mid-game team fight composition. And Team Dignitas had a side lane win condition and a decent team fight setup, but nowhere what FlyQuest has. They had really a 1-3-1 win condition or a 4-1. So they had Echo, Thresh, Aphelios, Lee Sin, and Set. So tons of disengage and really great side laners if you're going to go the Triforce Set build. And then also Echo obviously is an amazing side laner who scales so incredibly well. Like you legit have to send 3 if you get off the ground. If you get to the side lane after the mid game, you have to send 3 people for that guy, or he's just going to walk away from you or kill you under tower. So they had a really solid game plan of that. But the big issue is what happened in this game was their Rift Herald play. They had such awful setup on the Rift Herald and didn't play to their advantages. So something that happened in that is at 8 minutes, everybody starts to rotate up to the Rift Herald, right? So FlyQuest has a better team fight composition for that play, but Dignitas had a really big tempo advantage. So they had a big tempo advantage. They got on the map earlier, and they also had a TP advantage on the bot laner. And so it was Senna versus Aphelios. Johnson had the Aphelios. And so one thing that you have to worry about is that even if Senna can't TP in, she has her ultimate. Okay, there's ways you play around this because Senna had heal and Aphelios had TP. And so what happened is both the supports left the bottom lane. They recalled, left the bottom lane, and everybody was posturing around the Rift Herald. And Dignitas actually moved in first to get vision. So they actually got vision control first. And something really terrible happened. So they didn't know where the enemy support is, I believe. Dignitas didn't know where FlyQuest support was, I believe. So Johnson couldn't just blindly shove the wave. But there's a bunch of different options. So what Johnson ended up doing is he recalled while he had TP up and allowed Senna to repush the wave, which is exactly the thing that you can't do because you relinquish all of your advantages. So what Aphelios has to do on that play for them to be able to actually fight for this Rift Herald because they look like they want to fight for it is Aphelios has to keep Senna in his sights and keep the wave neutral unless they see the Alistair, which is the FlyQuest support. If they see Alistair, then Aphelios can push the wave so much faster and can 1v1 Senna easy at this stage in the game. So you got to so if you see the enemy support, then you shove in and you don't allow Senna to AFK and use her ultimate across the map. You want to keep her in your sights and fight for her, and then you shove the wave. And then if a fight actually breaks out, you have the wave shoved and you can TP to the fight, and Senna can't do anything. What ended up happening in that fight is Aphelios actually recalled, allowing Senna to push the wave, and then Johnson actually walked all the way back to bottom lane while Senna walked to the Rift Herald, and then Aphelios had the TP behind his own team halfway into the fight when Senna was ulting as he was TPing, and Senna was able to walk up and be in the fight at the same time Aphelios got there, and that's why they lost that. So they already didn't have a good team fight setup for the Rift Herald. But you can play for it because you have these advantages, and they relinquished all of their advantages. And so that's why, and then so they lost 4 people, didn't get anything, lost to Rift Herald, and they gifted the game over right then and there, and they don't have a good team fight, and you can still come back from there, but you have to play really strong at side lanes. Froggen kept TPing into fights as they were ending instead of just like playing for the side lane and playing to disengage. It was a really awful game from Dig. And so that's my problem with FlyQuest, with people saying FlyQuest are good. They've been getting gifted wins right now is the big issue I have for FlyQuest, and it doesn't seem like they're actually a strong team. They're just getting a lot of wins from the early season. It's not FlyQuest's fault. I think FlyQuest is playing well for what they have, and they're doing what they should be doing. I don't blame them as a do-nothing team. They're doing what they're trying to do, but they're being gifted wins, and that's straight up what's happening. But FlyQuest went 1-1. They, anyways, they beat Dig, lost to TL. All right, CLG. CLG is a dumpster fire, big dumpster fire. And I'm really sad that I power ranked them highly. I felt peer pressure to power rank them highly before week 1. But honestly, I mean, their roster looks okay. It looks like they definitely could be 4th, something like that. But, man, they look like a dumpster fire. Let's talk about their game. So they went 0-2 this weekend, right? Yeah, 0-2. So they played against 100 Thieves. Oh, so we already talked about this game a little bit. So Set was on Someday, or Someday was on Set. Ruin was on Kale. Okay, Ruin played this game so bad. So bad. Dude, Ruin has been playing so bad. I talked about this in the first power ranking video I did, is that, he was like, All-Pro 3rd team last summer, and that was like big troll. That was so big troll that he made All-Pro. I'm like, Ruin is bottom half of the week for sure in top winners. For sure, he's bottom half of the week, like bottom 2. For sure. Like, he's better than Kumo, and that's about it. He played this game so bad. KO seemed like a really great matchup into Set. Set can't really bother you. You're able to scale up. Seems like a really good answer to Set, and I was really happy to see that in draft. One thing you're not happy to see in draft is trying to dive a Set with like level 7 KO. They tried the dive Set and they got double killed. Ruin overextended in a side lane when it was completely obvious he was going to get collapsed on, and got collapsed on and died. He did that twice. And then he got a triple kill in the defending the base, but that's just hashtag just KO things at level 16. I mean, like, someone who doesn't play League and they play for like 2 weeks could do that play. You just have to flash. I think it was like a Jarvan combo. That's all you had to flash. Man, COG looked so bad. And Ruin like straight solo tanked this game. He played so bad. If you look at the kill score, you're like, oh, Ruin had 5 kills, 350 CS. He was popping off. Oh my God, he played so bad in this game. Wiggly also played super bad in this game. Crown was okay. Crown lost, played really poorly in an early game fighting in Zoe, but actually played really well. And there was a mid game fight where it was like, oh wow, Crown's popping off in this fight. They didn't actually end up winning the fight, but he played super well in it. Smoothie's engages were a little bit yikes. He had one engage that was nice. That mid game fight that Crown also played well in. But CLG, man, they're looking like a team that don't know how they want to play the game. They're not getting advantages solo, and they gotta figure. They're not playing well with their jungler. They gotta figure this shit out. It's looking bad, man. But yeah, they lost that game versus 100 Thieves, and then they played TSM on Sunday. We already talked about this game a little bit, or they played TSM on Monday. Yeah, Ruin also playing awful in this game. He's looking like one of the worst players in the league right now. Played awful in that game. Crown never got off the ground. They're kind of strong mid game, never got off the ground. They had a decent early game. They got some Drakes and stuff like that, but that was just a byproduct for Dardoch playing Kiana, and their TSM's early play they tried to make didn't work out. So they got the early Dragon, the early Rift Herald, and they looked a little better in this game, but just really had no idea what they wanted to do. They just kind of got rolled in the mid game. Broken Blade was playing so well. Kabe was playing really well, and they just got like. COG, man, they just got to figure something out. They got to figure out how they want to play the game. They need to figure out how to play with their jungler, and they need to. I don't know what they need to do about how Ruin is playing. This could. He's been. I don't know, man. These first 4 games have been so bad from Ruin. Maybe he can pick it up. I hope so. I don't like to see players fail. I hope he can pick it up. If he doesn't, they're gonna have a really, really, really tough split. really tough split. They need to figure some shit out, and then Ruin needs to stop trolling. Like, I don't know what's happening. Ooh, sheesh. Okay, EG. EG did not look good this weekend. Let's talk about. They played GGS and TSM. We already talked about the GGS game, so they tried to run the Sona comp. And Svenskeren looked really good in that. He played exactly what he was supposed to do. He played towards the Fiora because GGS had a Fiora. So they have some good ideas. EG's having a real tough time finding the right team identity. I really, really, really think they should just play like Cloud9 of last year. They should just, I mean, Jizuke plays a lot like Niski. Doesn't necessarily win lanes really hard, but he plays a lot of melee side lane champions, right? And Svenskeren plays super well with his mid. He should just, they should be playing for that, I really think. And I think that was like an idea, like they, you know, had strong jungle mid champions, right? And then they were running like a Sona comp. And so it's like the idea, because Bang is more of a team fight AD carry player. He's not a player you play around. He's a, you know, so he's a lot like how Sneaky plays, right? Just probably a better version, but he's a lot like how Sneaky plays. The issue with this team is that Kumos needs a lot of help in order to succeed, at least at this point in the season. And that's what they did. But that was less of a byproduct of getting Kumo ahead. It was more of a byproduct of GGS's only way to win the game was through Fiora. And so they wanted to play against the Fiora and try to shut her down. And they were somewhat successful at that. It's just, they weren't able to do anything with those gold advantages and end up getting split out of the game anyways by the Fiora. So I think EG just needs to figure out their identity. I really think they should just be playing like how Cloud9 played last year, play off of Bang. So Bang is the play off of him, not on him, and play on Jizuke and just play for getting like big side lane advantages with like split push comps, with disengage, stuff like that. I really think should be playing that because that's like a style that Jizuke already plays. And a style that Svenskeren obviously showed last year. Svenskeren's looking really good still. He's looking like one of the best junglers in the league. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. It's just like a team thing, you know. Their team's just not really coming together. And then that TSM game, we already talked about that one, so we're not going to talk about that anymore. But they went 0-2 this weekend. Kind of sucks. I think they really just need to figure out a team identity. Kuma had a little bit of a better weekend, but also Svenskeren was playing for him. I think Kumo is going to be a liability in the early season, but you know, he's a new player, so let's see how it'll go. So we'll see how it'll go. Okay, Dig. So we have Dig. So Dig went 1-1. We already talked a lot about Dig, how they lost that fly game, and that looked super, super bad. That Dig game was pretty nice. Obviously, TL is playing without their roster still. That Dig game was like a really solid game of League of Legends. It was fun to watch. And Dig looked pretty solid in it. So they look pretty solid in it. So Dig has players who can get their own advantages. They need to work on their team, their objective setup, or learning their advantages. I think, honestly, that fly game may have just been a fluke because they looked pretty solid in this game and all their other games. So it may have really been a fluke in that game of just like, we really fucked up playing around our advantages. So Dig's looking pretty solid. They just need to improve a little bit more. But we already talked about all their games already when we talked about other people. So IMT, we out here struggling. They played against C9 and GGS. We already talked about that C9 game. They got really rolled in that game. They beat GGS, and we already talked about this game because GGS was trying to run that heal composition, and it really didn't work out. GGS just was not getting it together. And IMT had a pretty strong mid game comp with Syndra and Rek'Sai, as well as Zion Ragon, and they just played stronger. Golden Guardians Keith super ran it down in this game, so they kept picking off Keith, and GGS just never could get their whole team together, and Immortals just ended up rolling them down. Bright spot on this team is Soaz has been looking pretty decent. I think he's been looking pretty decent. He had a nice Aatrox game. He looked fine on set. He never had to do anything on set this game. It was just kind of like GGS just kind of fell apart. Xmithy is definitely the best player on this team, and it's like a weird thing when Xmithy is like a multiplier. So if your team is bad, he's not going to make you any much better, really. But if your team's really good, he's going to multiply it. So this roster is like weirdly constructed. I think Ica is out here on the struggle bus. Altec, I've been really hot on coming into the year because if you don't know much about Altec, he's been working super hard. He took a whole year off and played in Korea and was, top challenger, that type of stuff for a whole year. So I'm really hot on Alltech. He had a really solid game at 805, 300 CS. Really solid game, but also GGS was really running it down and kind of fell apart in this game. Cool. All right, let's talk about TL. We already talked about both of their games, I believe. So they played Dig, and that was a really solid game. Just, Dig pulled out with the win, but that was a really solid game. TL's looking pretty nice. I know a lot of people are memeing on... I think a lot of people are memeing on Double Lift saying Senna is bad, but the whole thing is Senna isn't bad, but Senna is bad for their team. And Double Lift actually explained it if you listen to the interview, but maybe if you just can't understand what he was talking about, is a lot of the ways that they win games is they structure their plays into playing around prio bottom. So they play prio bottom. They don't play into their own lane like how Fnatic does, but they get prio with Double Lift, and then they make a play on the other side of the map, which Senna actually does get early lane prio because she can queue through the entire wave. She actually does get early lane prio. But another thing that Team Liquid does is they do a thing where Double Lift ends up not coming to the fights a lot of the time. And what ends up happening is they force the enemy to compete over an objective that TL actually isn't interested in getting. And so like they'll make like a Rift Herald play or something like that, right? This is like last season. They'll make like a Rift Herald play, but Double Lift will just stay in the bottom lane. And he'll get 3 plates, 2 minion waves, while the other enemy AD carry that he already had an advantage on goes up to the fight, and TL just plays it masterfully where they bait the enemy into like fighting for that objective, but TL never commits, or they commit just enough to cause enough of disruption to where it takes longer, and it ends up getting Double Lift like a 400 gold lead. That happens a lot. And so Senna's not very good at doing that. She can clear the wave early game pretty fast, but after you get past the first couple of minutes, it's way worse than champions like Xayah, Felio, stuff like that. So I do think Senna is a bad pick for this team for how they want to play and how they usually get their advantages in early mid game. It is actually bad for them. Maybe they'll pick it up, or maybe they'll find a way that they want to play around it, but it just doesn't seem like a TL champ. It doesn't seem like what they want to play around. So they lost that Dig game. It was a pretty solid game. Dig looked pretty nice in it, but as I just explained, TL are having a hard time playing to their win conditions and stuff like that. Obviously, they don't have their full roster and that type of stuff. But cool. And then they played FlyQuest as well. And that was the game I don't have the stats for, but that was a game Double played of Aphelios, I believe, and Viper was running it down. They looked a lot better in that game. I think Aphelios is a lot better champion for them for the reasons why I just explained. Whew. All right, guys, that was a long video. I just breathed into the mic. I hope you love that. So yeah, we're going to end it here because I do not want to talk forever and all that good stuff. I don't want the video to say 40 minutes because no one will want to click on that shit. But anyways, thanks so much for watching, guys. We're going to be doing a power ranking video. I'm going to be filming this actually right after this. Right after I get this uploaded, I'll be filming that. So be looking out for that. That's where we'll talk a lot more about teams. A lot of the stuff I said in this video will probably be in that video as well. But maybe we'll talk just a little bit more deeper about it, and we can talk more about specific teams, that type of stuff, and actually rank them, not going off their, their game score. Actually talk about what the teams actually look like when they're playing. So anyways, guys, that's going to be it. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next video. Make sure you subscribe, all that good stuff. I don't, the stuff I'm supposed to say on YouTube. Okay, bye-bye. Bye. Bye.